I work with the Psycho-oncology cooperative research group as a research assistant. So our research is about fear of cancer recurrence in caregivers. And so fear of cancer recurrence, or FCR, is one of the most prominent and enduring unmet needs for informal caregivers. And caregivers often experience these fears at levels equal to or higher than those they care for. And these fears can compromise the health and quality of life of both the patient and the caregiver. But despite this, there's actually little research about these fears, and we don't know anything about the potentially unique nature of caregiver FCR. So the aim of our study was to explore these fears and develop a caregiver-specific model for FCR. So to do this, we conducted 18 semi-structured telephone interviews with informal caregivers, and these interviews explored the caregivers' fears, impacts, and coping strategies. And then we used these interviews and did a thematic analysis using a framework approach. So essentially we found that patient and caregiver FCR is different. So caregivers were fearful of the patient suffering, and this was more than just the death of the patient. It was the actual process of dying, or the process of having to go through cancer treatments again, and the diagnosis and the fear and all of those sorts of things. Caregivers also felt overwhelmed by an uncertainty about when or if a recurrence would happen, and they felt this need to protect the patient from a recurrence or recurrence-related distress. So they would do this by suppressing their own concerns or monitoring for signs of a recurrence in the patient. And then they also had personal fears about what a recurrence would mean for them, and they basically felt unprepared for the potential loss of their loved one. But at the core of all of this was a sense of personal responsibility for the life of the patient. So that personal responsibility drove that need to protect. It really fueled that fear of the patient suffering, and it made them feel even more unprepared for the loss of the patient, and then made them feel like they needed to prepare for that potential recurrence. So our study is the first study to specifically explore caregiver FCR. So from here, we need to use this research to develop caregiver-specific models, measures, and interventions, and better support caregivers through these fears.